There it is. Is that good? Maybe I'll put it off to the side a little bit. Is that good like that? Oop. How about that? Does that work? Bub, 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 bub. Yeah. How's that working like this? Ooh, I can hear that. Okay. All right. All right. Here we go. Oh, thank you. Nice hot summer night, right? Thank you.
Yeah, right? I got
Whoa.
some water in there.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you. Ready to go? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Okay, so we're continuing tonight on Rinpoche's teachings on Chod. I wanted to start, though, with this part of the commentary of Kenshin Kunzang Pelden. Kunzang Pelden is one of the great teachers in late 1800s, early 1900s Tibet. And he was a student of Paltro Rinpoche, this truly great Lama. And he wrote a commentary on Shantideva's great text, Entering the Bodhisattva Path. Well, that is, generally considered one of the great commentaries and is relied on again and again and again. And so I thought I'd start with this contrast, so to speak. We have these teachings on emptiness, which involves you sort of engaging intellectually, questioning, and this analysis of your body and mind that obviously builds confidence, but also sort of leads you to the edge of experience. But in the Chod practice, although it's based on these very teachings, it's completely experiential. Because instead of sort of pondering or conceptualizing or thinking about emptiness and, appearances and true nature and all of those wonderful high concepts, with the Chod, you're getting the result of it right away. You're giving your body away. And boy, if there's anything that we don't feel empty about, it's our body, So at any rate, to start with, Kunzang Pelden. This is the end of his commentary on Shantideva's great work, and he calls it the effortless display of great compassion. The glorious master Atisha has said that when emptiness is realized, all sin and negativity comes to an end, and great compassion arises. Emptiness possesses the essence of compassion. Therefore, when emptiness is realized, it is the nature of things that great compassion should manifest. Not realizing that phenomena are empty, that their mode of being lies beyond all conceptuality, ordinary beings consider as real what is unreal. They attribute existence to what is non-existent, and selfhood to what is not a self, and therein lies their delusion. They long for happiness, but are ignorant of how to attain it. They struggle against all that seems hostile, and love and cling to what appears as friendly. Thus they are troubled in body and mind. In situations of joy and pleasure, they distract themselves physically and mentally with dancing and song. But when adversity befalls them, when death occurs or the loss of livestock, or when something happens which they do not want, they suffer. High and low, strong and weak, rich and poor, for friends and family, for the wealth and pleasures they desire, everyone strives and competes with others. They slash each other with swords and stab each other with spears. Their possessions, ill-gotten through the sins of body, speech, and mind, are the source of lives of great toil and sorrow, both now and in the future. People spend their time, their minds completely taken in by the paltry excellences of life. Through the kindness of religious teachers of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, beings occasionally perform a little virtue, such as observing the 8-branch fasting and so on. Because of this, they are fortunate in their migrations, appearing again and again in the many states of high rebirth in the various universes. There they live, enjoying all the pleasures they desire. But because they fail to practice virtue and instead commit evil actions, when they die, they fall into hell or other of the 3 lower destinies, and for a long time suffer unbearable pains, high and low, through states of joy and sorrow. Such are the unpredictable wanderings of sentient beings. Within the 3 realms of existence, every evil thought of attachment, hatred, stupidity, craving, and so on will precipitate beings into hell and other states of loss, into many chasmic abysses of dreadful woe. Under such conditions, no true understanding of reality, the means of liberation, is ever to be found. For indeed, through clinging to the substantiality of external phenomenon and to the reality of selfhood, the false conviction arises that they are permanent and truly existing. And since the realization of emptiness, which transcends conceptuality, is incompatible with a mistaken clinging to substantiality, it is almost impossible for such a realization, or even the hearing of the relevant teachings, to arise in samsara. They are like light in an immense darkness. But now, through the kindness of the compassionate teacher and his bodhisattva children, profound doctrines such as the teaching on voidness are expounded and listened to. But perhaps we become depressed, thinking, how will a person like myself ever be able to understand and realize something like this chapter on the perfection of wisdom, which expounds the teachings on emptiness? If so, we should understand that we have fallen prey to fear of emptiness. But as for people who, though they may be undaunted by enemies and negative forces, show no interest in hearing and studying the texts that expound the doctrine of emptiness, and have no grasp of them, the scriptures point out that this is a sign that emptiness is a subject to which, in their previous lives, such people have never turned their minds. On the other hand, if when we hear the teachings on emptiness, our minds are elated, and if through our strength of faith our eyes fill with tears and our skin stands up in gooseflesh, this is a sign that we already possess a propensity for study and reflection instilled in us in our earlier existences. It is said accordingly that even though we may not gain realization in this life, if nonetheless we turn our minds to the profound subject of emptiness, listening to the teachings and reflecting and meditating on them, it is certain that in our subsequent lives we will hear such teachings again and attain realization. This view is supported by the text, the 400 Yogic Deeds, which says that even if in this life one does not pass beyond sorrow through the understanding of suchness, nevertheless it is certain that one will effortlessly do so in a later existence. Take the case of Kubja the Small and Lekkyong in the past, who, because of powerful adverse karmic residues, fell victim to terrible suffering. When, however, they encountered the Buddha, they realized the truth and attained arhatship simply through hearing his teachings. The scripture says that this was because at the time of Buddha Kashyapa, they had been learned in the teachings on the aggregates, the elements, and the ayatanas. On the other hand, when it comes to emptiness, people who are unintelligent and narrow never even wonder whether phenomena are empty or not. Had they the slightest doubt about it, samsaric existence would fall to shreds for them. As it is said, due to little merit, not the slightest doubt, will rise against phenomenon. Let the slightest doubt arise, and this existence falls to shreds. Consequently, at this time, when we have come upon this profound teaching on emptiness, we should give meaning to this encounter by listening, reflecting, and meditating with joyful hearts. In this realm of existence, in which the light of suchness does not shine, afflicted by incomparable ills, beings languish for ages in a vast ocean of unbearable suffering, stretching beyond the limits of time and space. There, as we have just explained, they are oppressed and beaten down by the strength of their existential karma and afflictive emotions. Their capacity to accomplish virtue is meager, for even if a good intention surfaces in the mind, the proper support for wholesome activity, namely the freedoms and endowments of a human existence, is short-lived, so that there is no time for virtue to be accomplished. And so, during the brief span of this life, in the interest of a hoped-for longevity, all one's time is consumed in the various cares of the body and the taking of different remedies and cures to maintain a healthy constitution. Lacking the necessities of food, drink, and the rest, one is hungry and destitute and must therefore labor wearily for a lifehood. Half of life is passed in the stupefaction of sleep. Outside and in, one is assailed by various harms, abandoning oneself to futile behavior in the company of ordinary people, whose conduct is no better than that of children. And amid these various activities, life goes by, quickly frittered away, without any virtuous accomplishment to render it significant. That which causes liberation from samsaric existence, the mind's discernment of the absence of phenomenal substantiability and the truth of no self, all this is extremely difficult to come by. The habit of mental wandering, characteristic of one who dwells in samsara, is extremely powerful, like a river in spate. Excuse me.
Frank, can I ask a question?
Sure.
No, are you sure?
Let's wait a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I can keep going. I'll remember.
How could there ever be a way to stop it short all of a sudden? So also, these are all referred at specific lines, this commentary, in Chapter 9 of Shantideva's great work. So this is the commentary, for instance, on line 161, if you really want to get into it. How could there ever be a way to stop it short all of a sudden? Not only is this impossible, but there are demonic forces, such as Devaputra, the friends of darkness, who work and labor to cast us down, to call us to fall into hell and the other evil destinies. For the Lord of Demons will not tolerate that a bodhisattva, for a single one will set many hundreds and thousands of beings in the state of enlightenment, will not tolerate that a bodhisattva should ever receive an earnest or portent of the attainment of Buddhahood, and thus he will throw many obstacles in the bodhisattva's way. He will take false and lying forms, appearing as a Buddha, a bodhisattva, or even as the Lama himself, declaring that the disciple has now gained superior qualities. He will denigrate the true Dharma as false, substituting a parody in its place, and he will send his daughters, Yengchema and Mongchema, to distract and stultify. And the proverb says, for a profound Dharma, a profound, dark demon. Moreover, there are many false trails, such as eternalist and nihilist views, and since it is difficult to have an environment and an inner disposition favorable to the clearing away of all doubt, it is hard to free oneself from hesitation. Thus, with regard to goal and method, one never has conviction enough to affirm that this is the pure and unmistaken path. Nowadays, people love novelty and thus neglect the ancient texts, excellent and pure though they be, liking only what is new. But among the recent texts, there are some that are genuine and some false, and it is difficult to have enough certain knowledge, unclouded by doubt, to tell the goal and method of a genuine teaching from a false one. Moreover, even if a teaching is authentic, if it is practiced with doubt, it will be fruitless and without meaning. It is thus hard to have true discernment. It is hard to overcome distraction. Moreover, if because of doubts and so forth one dies without ever discovering the light of the doctrine, it will be extremely hard to find again the freedoms of the human state and to encounter the enlightened beings present in this world. It will be difficult to find time to practice their teachings wholeheartedly and so be able to turn back the flood of desire and other negative emotions. And so, with love and great regret, Shantideva laments that in this state of samsara, beings go continuously from sorrow to sorrow, and, given the various kinds of suffering, they live in great torment. In their ignorance, they are unable to discern the true behavior which they should adopt and the false paths that they should reject. They are not aware that they are foundering in suffering, and they cherish and cling to this existence. Alas, how can one not lament at the thought of them carried away on the river of sorrows? There are some people, for example, who wish for the sensation of coolness and bathe themselves repeatedly. Afterwards, they are discomforted by the cold and wish to be warm again. Thereupon they apply heat to themselves until they are tormented by the searing temperatures and have to bathe again. They thus torture themselves through this alternation of heat and cold, but blinded by their desires, they claim that all is well and that they are perfectly happy. So it is that people live contentedly, abandoning themselves to carefree pleasures, as if the terrible hardships of old age and death will never come to them. But age will fall upon them first of all, accompanied by incurable illness, and then the Lord of Death, implacable, will come upon them to kill them at the last, and once again they will have to undergo the unbearable pains of falling into the lower realms. Destitute of insight into the meaning of suchness, beings who circle in the three realms of samsara claim suffering for their happiness, and are tormented by the fires of misery. Oh, when might I extinguish this fire with a rain of happiness, issuing from the clouds of my unlimited accumulation of merit? Oh, when will this heavy downpour of all good things provide benefit with all that they desire, possessions and luxuries, clothing and resting places, and so forth, satisfying their every want and soothing thus the misery of their poverty? With thoughts such as these, one aims for the temporal happiness of beings. And again, with a view to the state of definitive goodness, when will I understand and assimilate the truth of profound emptiness of all phenomenon, devoid of all conceptuality, the voidness of the three spheres? When will I bring to fulfillment my store of merit, with joy and reverence for the welfare of living beings, so that I myself might experience directly the suchness of all things, the union of appearance and emptiness, that very equality freed from all concept? When might I teach this doctrine of emptiness, revealing all things as inconceivable? This doctrine, which is the medicine for beings poisoned by their clinging to phenomenal substantiality and brought to ruin in the three worlds of samsara. Oh, may this come about. When we think in this way, great compassion comes into being, and when we see the phenomenon are indeed devoid of true existence, we will be engulfed by such a strength of great compassion that we will never abandon living beings who circle in samsara through their fixated belief in true existence. In sum, the birth in the mind of great compassion and love for others, and a complete indifference to the 8 worldly concerns will naturally occur, as this text has explained. If those, therefore, who wish for fortunate destinies in samsara and the definite goodness of nirvana practice wholesome ways, such as generosity, self-discipline, and meditation, they will certainly reap great benefit thereby. But greater than these is the wisdom of realizing profound emptiness free from all conceptual elaboration, the deep and final remedy for the 2 obscurations. To gain it, one must strive in proper study and reflection. As is said in the Uttara Tantra, wherefore, generosity is productive of enjoyable experience, self-discipline leads to the higher realms, while meditation banishes afflictive emotion. But wisdom banishes all defiled emotion and conceptuality, and therefore it is supreme. The cause of it is listening to the teachings. So, I wanted to read that because this is chapter 9 of Shantideva's great work, Dalai Lama's favorite book. And I think, the benefit of these teachings is because it is so great. It's how do you communicate to other people? And what's remarkable about this, people sometimes, often people in the West are not interested in all the teachings. Americans are kind of anti-intellectual. And intellectual doesn't mean that you're some sort of university professor. but that you're using your conceptual mind to understand our dualistic existence, and therefore, when on the path, to discover the path in a way that can be communicated as best it can be. Of course, it can't be communicated in a sense, but this ability to have these teachings, this pondering of emptiness, the nature of the mind itself, the qualities, you might say, of the nature of the mind, these are things that are obviously non-sectarian. We're talking about the mind. It isn't a male mind or a female mind. It isn't a European mind or an African mind. It's just the mind. It's inherently beyond these kinds of limitations. But still, by taking these kind of teachings, we can approach it, so to speak. And as one's understanding becomes, greater confidence. Why? Because it's been tested. Like the Buddha said, just don't believe it, just blindly, so to speak, but only after you've tested it, like someone would test the purity of gold in the ancient market, pounding it because the impurities come out. That's what we do. So there's this whole incredible body of teachings with this kind of approach, which is exceptionally powerful, useful, approachable, communicable. Of course, it's like you said here, though, and people don't have an interest, there's really nothing you can do. These are amazing kind of karmic mysteries. What really causes someone to face this in a samsaric way, this terrifying truth? I mean, if you look at the nature of our unenlightened existence, it is not good. And so we cover it up, like you said, with distractions and with just self-satisfaction by not looking. So it's a courageous thing to even begin to act, and often great suffering can throw us into that, and so we have to face it whether we like or not. But what we do with that varies. So that's this whole conceptual thing. Almost all the teachings we have are based on this idea of, let me explain something to you. Like the Buddha giving teachings in this dialogue, back and forth, pounding, purifying our understanding, questioning, doubting, but then looking into that. Now, Chod, on the other hand, is like, we don't need that. Well, this is not true. They go hand in hand. But with the Chod practice, you're jumping into the experience of emptiness, you might say. And it's particularly, I believe, powerful. I think, who knows, next lifetime, maybe that's all we'll do is just have a Chod center and do nothing but Chod. Because in a funny way, it communicates to people because it's so direct, and you have this beautiful visualization and practice, and it's so involved because of the unity that the playing of the bell and the Dhammarun give you. You just can't be playing around with conceptual thoughts because that drum just goes out of control. So there's a natural kind of discipline, but unforced, just natural that it does. And of course, you're in the natural state of mind because of that. So the Chod practice is exceptionally valuable. And why? I mean, as we all know, we have all these great teachings of the sutra, all these teachings that are based on sort of it's the Buddha giving the teachings, but through this kind of dualistic expression. It's not through a dualistic lens. He's seeing it fully and wholly, but expressing it to dualistic beings in a way that they can get their head around it, so to speak. Again, it's this whole idea of using concepts to get beyond concepts. So we have all of that. And then we have the Tantra, which is direct experience. Some barriers there for many people. Seems so fantastical. And, it seems a little artificial, perhaps, for someone to visualize themselves as the Buddha. Seems a little bit like pretend or whatever. Chod has a foot in both worlds. So we're in our ordinary body, which sometimes people can be more relaxed about because you don't have to try. You have very good visualization of your ordinary body. We've been doing it for so long that it seems like completely natural and real. We have faith in this form. But then we do these, the tantric part is the visualizations with the activities going on with Vajrayogini. and this tremendous offering of our very body itself. And yet, because it's this mind visualized form, it's not scary to us. So we have the ability, the benefit to be kind of, grounded in our safe place, we think, this body, and yet this is a way we can give it up. You read the story of Vesantara, the Buddha's life, the Bodhisattva's life, the life before he became Gautama. And he perfected the perfection of giving in that lifetime. But the story is just like freaky to people. I mean, he's given away everything. He's given away his family. And he's in this situation of being a king, and yet the next thing you know, he's like a beggar. It's just like, that's kind of hard to sell to a Protestant culture. And not just Protestant. the modern West, that's a tough one. But in our ordinary form, and then suddenly these tremendous so we have a foot in both worlds. We have the great skillfulness of the Tantra, and yet we have the sort of rootedness in bodhicitta, love and compassion, and we kind of feel our limitations as a human being. You don't have to be somewhere else. But it's completely experiential and just jumping in. Although it has these verses from the Perfection of Wisdom, these famous verses in there, it's not pondering on those things. So it's just like seeding it, so we know that all of this is vast. So with that, I thought I'd read again from some of Rinpoche's teachings on Chod that he gave in 1999. And again, it's 89 pages, and some of it is a Chod empowerment. Now, we're not doing a Chod empowerment here this time. But that's okay. Gretchen's been in contact with Digi Palmo about that. No problem at all. But this is from Rinpoche speaking. He said, Guru Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, goes on to say that once you understand and experience the true nature of mind, it is by far much better to go to a fearsome place and practice this Chod for one day. It is better to practice for one day than sitting on a cushion and meditating for 1 year. So there is this comparison that is talking about the specialty of Chod. This is a reiteration about why fearsome places like cemeteries where there are demons, ghosts, all kinds of aversions, where there's a lot of fear. Why is this very useful? When one is in fearsome places where it is believed that all kinds of negativities are going on there, as a result, one fears. When a person is stricken with fear, the person's mind becomes very, very alert. It is something like, I talked to you about it, in a war situation or walking through a jungle where there are vipers and enemies everywhere, and you are trying to go very quietly. The only thing you hear are your own footsteps. At that time, the mind is very, very sharp. And then, when there are external distractions, in a cemetery situation, for example, first you will fear immediately because your goal is to get rid of delusions. Your mind will try so hard to switch back to the idea that all these are delusions and all these do not exist, then it is very, very beneficial. On the other hand, if you are overwhelmed by the fear, then there are so many stories of beings that lost their mind or lose their life because they are overcome by fear. So here you can see this distinction. Intellectually, it is extremely courageous to face the contradictions of our life. Instead of looking for satisfaction, just going through our outer projections, like Shantideva says, trying to cover the whole world with leather, the whole planet with leather. Instead of doing that, or even trying to cover our little area patch, instead, we put on a pair of sandals. And what does that mean? It means that we've looked at the faults of samsara, and this is courageous. So that's one thing to do that, in this kind of conceptual way, in the ordinary way that our mind stream works and that we sort of operate in the world. But with Chod, look at this. You go to a cemetery, you rouse your great fears. That's the same thing, but you can see it's more existential. I mean, fear is like, that's not just a pleasant idea we have, or some idea that we might be uncomfortable. We're still a step away from our own experience of our mind by conceptuality. You know, there's some safety there. I can think about it. But with fear, it's right there in the face. And you understand now the sharpness of the mind, because it's really true. When there's fear, there's no distraction. I mean, the mind has that sharp quality of Manjushri's sword, or in our case, Vajrayogini's hook knife. All right. There is a story, probably a very useful story, Rinpoche continues. It's a story of a person who was overcome by fear. It was during the time of Jamyam Khyentse Wangpo, the Khyentse Rinpoche, the previous Khyentse Rinpoche, not the Khyentse Rinpoche who passed away, but in 1999. But previous to that, the place was in Tibet, where there was a Chod practitioner, quite a good practitioner, but he had a lot of ego and pride. He asked for permission from Khyentse Rinpoche. I want to go and practice Chod at this very fearsome lake called Sendung Dorje Wanda. It was said that whoever went to practice Chod at this lake did not return. Rinpoche said, well, probably you're not quite ready yet to go practice Chod at this lake. It will be better if you didn't. Practitioner thought to himself, the Lama is kind of underestimating me. He said to the Lama, well, I ought to go. I must go. Then the Lama said, well, if you insist on going there, take my belt. And here is a vajra made out of meteor iron. You tie this belt around your neck like a noose and put this vajra as a peg in the earth, and you tie the other end of my belt to this vajra. Then the practitioner thought to himself, this wouldn't really be necessary, but I do have a lot of faith in the Lama, and if I didn't, I would be going against his wishes. Then, just for the heck of it, I'll do it, he talked to himself. Then the practitioner pitched his Chod tent and started practicing Chod. After a while, he felt a little drowsy and snoozed away. When he woke up, he looked around, and there was beautiful sunshine. The sky was clear, and he could see all the yaks, sheep, and all the animals herded by the shepherds and the villagers. He said to himself, this is it. This time my practice has been absolutely successful. And then, all these, by the way, were kind of imagination delusions in the practitioner's mind. And then he saw himself going to Khyentse Rinpoche and narrating the story of how successful his practice had been. He saw himself returning to his hometown village. He also saw himself going on a retreat. So all these things he saw in his mind. Then he saw himself on a retreat in a cave up the mountain. Of all his sponsors, he saw the major sponsor bringing the yaks and domestic animals down and saying to themselves, we are going to offer milk and yogurt to our wonderful Lama who is on a retreat. From his cave, he saw all this drama being enacted. He saw the yaks coming down. He saw the sponsor's family members coming after the yaks. And all of a sudden, the yaks stampeded. When the yaks stampeded, one of them batted the sponsor's father in the stomach, and he died. There was a lot of grief from the family members, and they came to his retreat place and said, now you have to come out of that retreat because the yak batted on our household father and he passed away. You cannot be in a retreat. You have to come down and pray, etc., etc. All stricken with grief. And the Lama on the retreat thought, now I have to go now out of this retreat place and pray for the deceased. Whenever he crossed over the threshold, he would say, Kuncha Sumke, I don't know what that means, praying to the triple gem. Each time he would say that when crossing the threshold, he would say that, and when he came out of his retreat place, was about to cross over the threshold, and he said the Kuncha Sumke, and prayed to the triple gem. And at that time, crossing over the threshold, he really jumped into the lake. He was not crossing over the threshold, but he saw himself falling, stepping into the lake. Khyentse Rinpoche, knowing what was going to happen, sent a monk saying, go there and see what the practitioner is doing. When the monk went to see the Chod practitioner, he was soaking wet. He was in his tent holding onto his vajra and belt, and he was reciting Guru Rinpoche's mantra when the monk appeared and said, what are you doing? Lama sent me. You're supposed to come with me. Let's go back. Still, the Chod practitioner thought that because he had all this kind of deluded visions, He thought that this monk was not real, but was also part of his deluded mind. He said no, and kept on insisting that they should stay. What the practitioner really did was to spend a couple of hours by the lake. In these couple of hours, he was so deluded, he saw all these things. He practiced Chod. He was successful. Day broke, sun shone, season changed. The nomad sponsors came down, started offering him things. The father died. All these things just took place in his mind, which were all delusions. Likewise, when you practiced Chod, you could also have all kinds of experiences. When you see or experience all kinds of signs, sometimes it could be good signs, other times it could be bad signs. When you see good signs as a result of practicing Chod, you should not feel happy about it, or talk or think about it. Because if you have that kind of feeling, that feeling is going to be accompanied with attachment. Conversely, if you've had bad experiences, you should not be upset with these bad experiences, because again, with that kind of state of mind, you are likely to generate anger. Whatever kind of experience you have, just let them be. Don't pay too much attention. Instead, you should pray. You should generate devotion to your Lama and keep on practicing. Your kind of fearsome cemetery should be, for the time being, your own home. At home, there will be attachment, there will be anger, there will be emotional afflictions, and there will be plenty of ignorance, too. And Rinpoche laughs. When these hit you, then try to stay stable and practice, and that will be fearsome cemetery. If you are able to practice patience and not be kind of distracted by these things, then the external negative forces, the devas or the demons, will not affect you. Then you will learn not to generate anger or treat them as aversions. And when you see something more appealing, you will not have attachment. So it is a good thing to start at home. When you decide to practice at home, first say to all your family members that you are going to practice Chod. One day Chod practice, and ask each and every one of them to be their worst and throw at you everything that they can. Harsh words. Be nasty. Try to do the utmost worst. You tell them, I am going to overcome. Then you practice Chod. You will succeed that. Then when you get used to that, the next step is to have a Chod retreat at home for 7 days. Again, ask your family members to do you the favor to get on your nerves. And you practice not to be distracted by these things. When you succeed these 2 tests, then you can go to the cemetery. Really, devas or ghosts or demons, your family members can be demons too, so you don't have to go outside. They can be demons at home, and when you get used to your demonic family members, then you can go out and face other demons. When you overcome anger in its place, you are going to generate compassion. One's own body is something you discard, but if you have kind of morbid attachments to your physical being, then is going to leave an imprint. This will lead to a cyclical existence. Body is something like a change of clothes. Now you have this body. When you pass away, you discard that. But mind does not cease. It continues. Then if you can train your mind to understanding these ideas, you will have less attachment to body. When you have less attachment to body, when you go to cemeteries, to fearsome places, to practice Chod, these wouldn't be any kind of apprehension. There wouldn't be any fear. When you don't have these apprehensions and fears, then there wouldn't be delusion. One's own physical being, the body, is a wonderful thing, but unfortunately it goes through all these processes. First birth, then aging, sickness, and finally death. That we all have to face. Then, although a wonderful thing is not something that lasts, it changes. It has to be discarded, whether we like it or not. And that is why we keep on saying that we should train our mind to focus everything. Attach all the importance to one's mind, and less attachment and less importance to one's physical body. It is just like driving a car. It is shiny and new, and as years go on, it rusts and decays, and finally you don't want it. You want to throw it away. Once one's own body is subject to aging, sickness, and death. So there is no point in clinging onto something that's not going to last. It's much better to focus on something that is always there, which is the mind. So we had this long sort of elucidation of emptiness by Kempo Peldon. And then with Rinpoche here, it's really the same thing, but it's in this direct experiential way. And the actual forms and kind of mechanics of the Chod practice allows us more easily. Because the other thing about the intellectual side, I mean, you have to do both, really. Whatever helps, whatever encourages you, gives more confidence. And of course, with the conceptual teachings, you have the ability, which is bodhicitta, to discuss with other people where someone's open and it's going to be, useful and helpful. But with the Chod practice, it's like we're not getting hung up on so many things, because we have the bell, we have the drum, we have this visualization going on. Just the working on it is a natural kind of concentration that happens, and it's like, allows us to not be involved in distraction because there's too much going on. This is really helpful. I think what Chogyam Trungpa said, because he was good friends with, can't remember his name, Suzuki, I think, Roshi, the Zen master who was at San Francisco Zen Center. And Trungpa said, the practice of Zen, which is the practice of the perfection of wisdom, from the sutra side, it's this practice of through our concentration, through our penetration, putting all this kind of focus and energy into a one-pointed doubt. They call the ball of doubt the wato. And so you because you have confidence in the teacher, you have confidence in the method, you have confidence in the Buddha, you can do it on the surface. Is like an ordinary person would say, why is this person doing this? And why do you have faith in this particular method? But nonetheless, if one does that, you can sort of penetrate into emptiness. So the focus is this narrow kind of, but then Trungpa Rinpoche said that with that, what opens up is Mahamudra. Mahamudra is the practice of great relaxation based on that emptiness. Suddenly everything becomes useful. Everything becomes, you might say an object of concentration, but it's not that obsessive, I'm a distracted person, which is my basic belief about myself. There, if I'm really going to work on, it's skillful, it works. But this vast opening up of relaxation, instead of focusing on every little detail, it's a natural kind of relaxed focusing on this whole experience, again, of Chod, the bell, the drum, the visualization. Again, there's so much going on that you're naturally non-distracted, as it is when you play an instrument, you say. I think you've heard me in one of my personal stories of the Yamataka Druptas that I've been fortunate to do. And in the beginning, you're just there and you're trying to do the mantra and the meditations and everything, but, you're sleepy and, oh my goodness, and it's just like, distractions on steroids, It's like your mind is screaming, trying to distract you. Just all sorts of things. And then after some years, Rinpoche said, well, gee, would you do some of this chanting? And then at one part, there's a very limited ritual. It wasn't doing like the incredible thing that the Umzes do, but, where I had to be doing a little bit with the small damaru and the bell. And suddenly, by having just this little obligation to do with some exterior things like an instrument, suddenly I wasn't sleepy anymore because I was in front of all these people. You had to be there for it. So it's like the method is so skillful because it takes away your distraction. And I've thought that often about, again, my very limited experience, but with visualizations, because I'm not a natural visualizer at all. But instead of, fighting with boredom, you can suddenly focus on different parts of the Buddha, for instance, the crown or the hand implement, or in a wrathful sense, the necklace of severed heads, or the color, or whatever it is. And instead of just being, we've seen in our normal sutric meditation, you can get very bored very easily, and it becomes like an abstraction and a battle itself. But yet with the Tantra, it's so skillful because of that Mahamudra, that relaxation and opening up of the whole world suddenly being sacred. You're able to continue your concentration, although you're jumping around seemingly on one thing or another, because all of the objects are sacred objects. So you're building naturally merit, this big kind of positive momentum. And so here we are. Rinpoche's teachings on Chod are so completely direct, because when those delusions dissolve, you're seeing the emptiness of them. But no one's, telling you, the intellectual teachings, you might say, on emptiness. But of course, they're more than intellectual teachings. It's just the intellectual expression of the true nature itself. Okay. So for here, Rogo, did you have a question?
It was already answered.
Oh, good. Right.
You're a genius.
No. I'm just a parrot reading.
Actually, it was kind of interesting, Frank.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Right on. Thank you. I find that when the master, I forgot who wrote the book on the commentary on Shantideva's 9th chapter, he was talking about the hold on, I have to pull this up.
Yeah.
What was the word he used? There we go.
It's Kunzang Pelden. Kenshin, Greek Kempo. Kenshin Kunzang Pelden. Again, he was a student of Pater Rinpoche and Mipam, I believe.
It used the word physical manifestations as substantial. And of course, no self. So I would like to hear you give your opinion of what unsubstantial would be.
Unsubstantial?
Yes. I have my ideas, and I think it was answered while you were talking to me. But I would like to hear you talk about that, Frank.
Well, the opposite, right, of substantial. So substantial is...
Right. Something that's solid, it's out there,
It's
it exists,
there.
it's there, yeah.
And it's
right on.
existing unto itself. I mean, when I
Right.
look at that chair, I see chair.
Right, yeah.
And when I'm talking to other people, I'm dealing with chair. Do you know this
Yeah.
chair? Do you like this chair? I don't like this chair. I like this chair. Whatever. I'm not talking about the infinite conditions that have come together
Right.
that allow us to visualize a chair.
Yeah.
The legs, the cloth, the color, the shape, the form, the size, all those things.
And then, of course, there's the...
Conditioning?
Yeah,
Well, because then there's chair that you have in your head that
Right.
represents chair.
right.
Which is pretty wild, too. So
Our
Frank,
fundamental
man, thank you for that.
delusion
Yeah, yeah.
is that we think by naming something,
Nominally,
we
right.
understand it.
Yes, right. Yes.
And it's just like you said, it's
Yeah.
nominal understanding. Understanding the name, but that's not the thing itself. But there's nothing wrong with naming things. It's very useful. Otherwise, how am I going to talk to people? But at the same time, to get attached to that appearance of the chair as being the nature of the chair, we're missing out big time. And what are we going to do? We're going to suffer, because that chair is going to disappoint us.
Well said.
Yeah, yeah. So it's powerful. It's powerful understanding, but it sort of goes, I think, hand in hand. You don't make some choice like, well, I'm just going to do experiential Chod,
Yeah.
because they're mutually reinforcing.
Okay.
But people are different. I mean, because there's some people who it's just not their thing, this kind of talking about emptiness and everything, and they just, to give you an idea, this is not really a dharmic idea, although someone gave me supposedly a paper on some Western guy's interpretation of Dharma. And, I thought I'd read it just so I could have an opinion and have a good discussion about it. But it just gave me such a headache trying to read 2 sentences of it, because it's just creating concepts on top of concepts and thinking if we can just name it right. And this is academia. If you can name it somehow, and they're always trying to come up with a new name. And
Yeah.
Megan is great on this because she gets so much jargon living in that academic world.
Yeah, it's very fascinating, the conceptual ideas and realizing that the
Right.
concepts are just a rabbit hole and they keep going and going and going, and concepts pile up on top of concepts,
Right.
and you're still not actually at the moment of happiness that you're
Never
actually
there.
wanting.
And in a funny
That's
way to think
amazing.
about it, I haven't really thought much about this, but if you think
Yeah.
about time, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because the past is obviously gone. The future is obviously not here right now. But the present, if you try to grab onto the present, you can't do it.
Yeah, it's
Because
crazy.
each instant, it's gone. So it's just this kind of absolute freedom of action.
So Frank.
Yeah.
So it seems like when you finally dissolve all of the liking, disliking, and just, I guess, relax into the insecurity of the nature of mind, which is continuously showing us new things, then you're left with happiness. Is that?
Yeah, it has the aura of happiness.
Okay, all right, okay, thank you, right. So it's the liking and disliking, it's desiring to have, like let's say I have a good, I just eat some pizza and it's delicious, and the desire to continue that, and of course because it's no longer the moment, it
Right.
fades. And then I want other pleasurable things, but of course that's not the case. I have a hangnail or whatever it is, and so it's all the liking and disliking. Is that
Yeah,
what Chod's
yeah,
Chod's gonna get rid of?
Yeah,
Okay.
but think about,
Yes.
say
Okay.
when we get angry. It's amazing. Why? We have all this stuff in the past that we're hanging on to.
Yes.
So we're there instead of being in that moment, which can be, pain or whatever, but purely experienced. But instead, we do a secondary. Got another mouse showing up. Instead, we've got another iteration, you might say. So you've got this pure experience, but the next thing you're doing is that you're putting all your favorite hobby horses in there.
Right.
Like he did that to me before, or women always do that to me, or whatever. We just have all this baggage that we're carrying around with us, and then we're wondering why we're not moving so well.
And that's and that's solidifying yourself, which causes other people
Yeah.
to be other, and that makes it terrible.
But the intellectual, in a sense, can only go so far, because it is conceptual by nature,
Yeah.
and in a very profound one, even the experience only goes so far. But there's something about experience is that you can't lie about it.
Interesting, Frank. Tell me what you think of this. It seems like also the intellectual understandings can only come through your individual consciousness, which is, of course, individual, which doesn't have you have that not one but not two experience of being everything.
Yes, but at the same time,
Because you can't even think outside your individual nature.
But this is
correct?
the greatness of lineage and tradition too, because when we're going through this isn't us just coming up with some idea,
Right.
but rather there's a degree of faith or confidence there. I'm going to be free to investigate this because, Garinpoche is pretty amazing to me, and he's said positive things about Kempo Peldon.
And they want us to do that. They
Well,
want
of
us
course.
to. They want
but I
us
mean,
to
it's a
test
way
it.
that it's a help
Yeah.
to us.
Right.
It's like, here, Johnny, we're at the YMCA camp. We're going to learn tennis now. Tennis is a great game. And I remember the YMCA camp that I was at, the director was this, he looked like he was 80 years old, but I think he's probably in his 60s.
26.
Was there. But he was a former pro tennis player.
Wow.
And they had, one of the counselors who was head of tennis, who was teaching everybody tennis. And they would do at the end of the summer, he would play the head of the old guy would play this 18-year-old, 20-year-old guy he was on a college tennis team, he was good. And he kept losing to the old guy. Because the old guy just knew to do the minimum amount of thing, where to hit it. He was just like so experienced. So, someone like me, 8 years old, I wasn't about to question that old guy about tennis. I wasn't questioning the 20-year-old either. But for us, we're given a book. Okay, this has been around for 100 years. This is about a book that's been around for 1,500 years. And that 1,500-year-old book said, you know what? I owe everything that I know back to a man who lived 1,000 years before. And this passed through Nalanda, where we had 100,000 monks, people debating. You can have a little bit of confidence,
Yeah, for sure.
enough to say, well, maybe I can look at this, and truthfully, enough to have doubt, because doubt is a good thing. It means that you're really working on it. It's like making the recipe, and it just seems like too much salt. You got to investigate it rather than just blindly just putting. Maybe someone did it wrong. and also how out of this trying to experience, that's where it's like a great artist, you know. They've learned the old masters, right? And so therefore Van Gogh can do something that's like a new step, which is like totally creative, but it's based on, it's not casting away. So for us, that's why I think this is so wonderful, because the experiential side, you know, it really helps to have someone like Gar Rinpoche or Great Faith that says do this. And like he said here, you can have bad experiences, have good experiences. What do you do? The good experiences, you don't attach onto them. The bad experiences, you don't fear them and then get angry. So it's teaching us emptiness, but in this very direct way that, like, your kids can understand. You know what I mean?
Sure. Frank, thank you.
Is that what
Yeah.
all the training is?
Keen, grab the mic.
Oh, here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is all this training that we're getting,
Is it on right now?
Should be.
Yeah.
is
there
it
you go.
on?
Yeah, I think so.
All this training that we're getting, is it unconditioning us? From
Well,
what
yeah.
we've already been conditioned on.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, it's an excellent point. We're basically, this is a huge thing of unlearning. You know, if we want to learn, there's lots that can be learned, but you know, the attachment of learning, this is the worldly mistake. You know, it's like the more knowledge I can pump into my head, the better somehow, right? And we have this experience where you have, this happens so much in our culture. You've got someone that's got a PhD in, I don't know, worm science. And suddenly we think they're an expert on economics or whatever. You know, I mean, it's just, people get out of their own lane. But the problem with that kind of knowledge is that it's just being in a lane. Whereas realization is the whole ball of wax. Like that Chinese master said, with realization, I was able to stick my head in a big bowl of rice and eat as much as I wanted anytime. The whole world became like a big bowl of rice, he said. There's just no alienation, no blockages anymore. But yeah, it is radically unlearning, because if it were just simply about learning, how discouraging would that be? You'd have to learn every language in the world. You'd have to learn all the histories of the world. I saw someone did a representation of, through DNA, they had some skull or something of some woman who lived in Northern Europe, or even I think it was Northern Europe, but like 60,000 years ago. And they could make, I guess, a pretty good guess at her appearance in that. And so they had this statue, like, or not statue, but recreation of her. And I thought to every one of us has somehow come down from the last million years from all these people that have lived before us. It's really mind-boggling when you think about it. And we don't give them the time of day. If any one of them had screwed up, we wouldn't be here. Just the right moment, everything, all of this. So we have this tremendous kind of obligation, yet we live in this culture that says, oh, the past is bad. You know, let's get rid of those old people. Let's tear down everything, because somehow we're going to be great, you know?
You always point to the lineage tree saying, how bad is the past?
Yeah, right. And then there's the whole, like the spiritual lineage on top of it, like the force that was transmitted through all of this. So we're just extremely fortunate, because, I mean, to try to figure out this book or to start over and reinvent the wheel, it doesn't happen that way. And it's like he said, that one example of someone who, there's also an example in Japan of one man who worked so hard at his meditation and was, discouraged because he didn't come to the deeper states of realization that he thought he would. But his teacher told him, oh, no, next lifetime be easy. Now that takes faith. We normally hear that and people say, well, that's just political. Someone's just trying to assuage me, or talk to me like a child. But if you talk to Gar Rinpoche, it's actually true. And so there's nothing wasted. The other thing is, though, that really gives me great encouragement is that, the moment of death is such a great opportunity, because whether we like it or not, the body's going away. All this stuff, our focus on these different qualities, the solidity, the liquidity, the warmth, the fluidity, all these things go away. And we see it through this mental process of these things and the signs that come from that. But there comes to be a moment when, like it or not, whatever we're attached to isn't there anymore. But the mind continues. So there's actually this opportunity of this great openness. We've had for eons this habit of attaching to something. We think that's how we get happy, that we have to attach to these outer forms that we ourselves have created. We don't realize we're the artist. But there's this moment. So if you know that, and it's said that all of this practice that we've done, nothing is wasted. You can be doing half-hearted mantra and you just think, wow, this is really not doing anything for me. But at that moment, it can be like it's said, I don't know what they say, like a bellows or something. It's all like it, can all be focused there because you've trained the mind in this way. And so similarly, in the Chod practice, when you are time after time donating your body, time after time boiling the vessel that you've put your body in, and all the impurities froth off, and so whatever is pure is there, and then that's sprinkled, satisfying the beings of the six. You've done that 1,000,000 times. It's not like that goes away. You've practiced giving away your body, so then when your body is not there, well, I've been here before, it's not scary. The ordinary person, that's like terrifying. So, all of these have tremendous skill and experience and experiential wisdom behind it. But the greatness of Chod, in my very limited understanding, is that it has 1 foot in the sutra, which we can all relate to, 1 foot in the tantra, so it's completely experiential, and yet in a way that is, I don't know, maybe more approachable to us or effective. I don't know what it is. I mean, the Chod practice that Rinpoche gave on the old retreat land, Bangta Rinpoche, so the 3 high lamas, you have Chetsang Rinpoche and Chunsang Rinpoche, heads of the lineage, but underneath there were 3, Bangta Rinpoche, Garchen Rinpoche, Gyata Rinpoche. Gyata Rinpoche. Gyata Rinpoche just was in New Jersey and passed away. But so in 99, when Rinpoche came here, Bangta Rinpoche was doing this worldwide tour with the 16 young Drikung monks doing their sacred dances. And Chod was one of the things they were doing. And Tashi Jamanling from Toronto, our good friend, was their babysitter. He was driving around this van and making all the arrangements and everything. But here we had Bangta Rinpoche and Garcha Rinpoche. I mean, amazing. And these Chod teachings, it was a very powerful retreat. It's like wisdom surprises you, because when you're not trying to create something, the uncreate is there. And you just remove the obstacles, there's actually clarity. At any rate, I think we're just very happy when we heard that our new friend, this Drikung nun is coming from Germany. It should be good, as much as we can do. Okay, yeah.
As far as the empowerment, will we get that eventually, or?
It is online if you want.
Is it online? Okay.
Yeah, it's in YouTube Seattle, Drikung Seattle, I think, or
Okay.
something like that. Gretchen did it today. There is 16 minutes of just horrible static and stuff. But that's what Rinpoche is introducing. And at minute 16, the sound clears up perfectly, and the empowerment starts. So you can do it that way. Yeah.
Is it recommended we do that?
Yeah, if you can. Drikung Seattle, or YouTube Drikung Seattle. I think Gretchen's going to send out the link through the email, so just look for it. Okay, anything else? I've talked too much? Yep.
Never.
All right.
Thank you so much, Frank.
Yeah, no,
Really helpful.
good.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, then we'll use...
Frank, my favorite